In this episode, we widen the meaning of vulnerability beyond software and networks, because security programs that ignore physical vulnerabilities often discover too late that the most advanced technical controls cannot overcome a simple physical weakness. Physical vulnerabilities are weaknesses in facilities, devices, and the environment that can enable unauthorized access, disruption, or loss of evidence. They matter because every digital system ultimately depends on physical things: buildings, doors, power, cables, servers, laptops, and the people who can reach them. If an attacker can walk into a room they should not access, steal a laptop, unplug a network device, or tamper with a server, the attacker can bypass many of the logical controls that security teams rely on. Physical vulnerabilities also include non-malicious risks like water leaks, overheating, or power instability, which can cause outages and data loss even without an attacker involved. For beginners, the key point is that security is about protecting assets and outcomes, not only protecting packets and passwords. When you include physical vulnerabilities in your program, you move from a narrow view of security to a realistic view that matches how incidents actually happen in the real world. Facility security is the first area, and it begins with access control, meaning who can enter which areas and how that access is verified. A facility is not just the building as a whole, because different areas inside a building have different trust levels. Public lobby spaces, general office spaces, wiring closets, server rooms, and storage areas should not all be treated the same, because the consequences of unauthorized access differ dramatically. For example, access to a network closet can enable someone to connect a device that intercepts traffic, and access to a server room can enable direct tampering or theft of equipment. Beginners often assume that locks and badges are enough, but physical access control is more than hardware, and it is also about process. You need clear rules for issuing badges, revoking them when roles change, and handling temporary visitors. You also need to account for social engineering, because attackers may attempt to tailgate, meaning they follow someone through a door without proper authorization. Facilities controls, therefore, include training and awareness so employees feel comfortable challenging unfamiliar faces in restricted areas. A mature program treats facilities access as a controlled boundary, similar to a network segmentation boundary, because both boundaries decide what pathways exist to critical assets. Monitoring and detection in facilities is another important aspect, because physical access controls can be bypassed and mistakes can occur. Cameras, alarms, access logs, and guard procedures provide visibility into who entered restricted areas and when. The manager-level value is not surveillance for its own sake, but evidence and deterrence. If a device goes missing or a network closet is accessed unexpectedly, access logs and camera footage can help reconstruct what happened and whether the incident was accidental or malicious. For beginners, it helps to see facilities monitoring as the physical equivalent of centralized logging, because it creates an audit trail. It also supports accountability, because people are more careful when they know access is tracked. Facilities monitoring should be aligned with critical zones, because monitoring every hallway equally can waste resources, while monitoring the right choke points can produce high value. Another key concept is response readiness, because monitoring without a response plan only records failures rather than preventing damage. If a door alarm triggers for a server room, someone must know who responds, how quickly, and what steps to take. When facilities monitoring is integrated into incident response, physical anomalies can be treated with the same seriousness and discipline as suspicious network events. Physical vulnerabilities also include device security, which covers endpoints, servers, removable media, and specialized equipment. Devices are vulnerable because they can be stolen, tampered with, or accessed by unauthorized people, and physical access can shortcut many logical protections. For example, if someone steals an unlocked laptop, they may gain access to cached credentials, sensitive files, or active sessions. If someone gains physical access to a workstation, they may install hardware that captures keystrokes or connects to the network invisibly. Even if you do not dive into detailed tactics, the high-level lesson for beginners is that physical possession changes the security equation. Device security, therefore, includes basic controls like locking screens, securing laptops when traveling, and storing spare equipment in controlled locations. It also includes lifecycle discipline, such as tracking devices from procurement to retirement, so assets do not disappear into unknown hands. In a mature program, device inventories support both cybersecurity and physical security because the same asset needs both kinds of protection. When devices are treated as physical objects with custody, rather than as abstract endpoints, loss and tampering become easier to prevent and investigate. Device protection also includes managing who can physically touch critical infrastructure, such as networking gear, servers, and storage systems. A server room is not secure if too many people have keys, and a network closet is not secure if it is used as a general storage room with frequent access by non-technical staff. For beginners, it can be surprising how often critical infrastructure lives in ordinary spaces like closets and shared rooms, which increases risk. Physical controls for infrastructure include locks, restricted key management, and clearly defined access privileges. They also include simple practices like keeping racks closed, labeling equipment appropriately, and ensuring that cabling is protected from casual disconnection. Another often overlooked vulnerability is unsecured ports, where someone can plug a device into an open network port in a conference room and gain access to internal networks. Preventing that requires coordination between network policy and physical space design, because the physical environment determines where access points exist. When device and infrastructure access is controlled consistently, you reduce the chance that someone can introduce an unauthorized device or disrupt operations with a simple unplug. That may sound basic, but basic controls often prevent high-impact incidents. Environmental dependencies are the third area, and they are often underestimated because they do not feel like security until something fails. Environmental dependencies include power, cooling, fire suppression, water control, and physical space conditions that keep systems operating safely. If power is unstable, systems can shut down abruptly, corrupting data and disrupting operations. If cooling fails, servers can overheat, causing damage and outages that can be expensive and slow to recover from. If water pipes leak near critical infrastructure, equipment can be destroyed, creating an availability crisis that looks like an attack from the outside. For beginners, the key is recognizing that availability is a security goal, and environmental failures can be as damaging as malicious actions. Environmental controls include uninterruptible power supply, UPS, systems, generator readiness, redundant power paths, and monitoring for temperature and humidity. They also include physical maintenance, like ensuring HVAC systems are serviced and that server rooms are not used in ways that block airflow. A mature program treats these dependencies as part of risk management because business continuity depends on them. Environmental dependencies also include the physical connectivity that supports networks, such as cables, patch panels, and connections to external service providers. A network can be disrupted by a backhoe cutting a fiber line, by a construction project damaging cabling, or by unauthorized access to a demarcation point where external connections enter the building. These events may not be malicious, but they can create the same business impact as an attack, such as loss of connectivity and service interruption. Defensive planning, therefore, includes redundancy where feasible, such as multiple network paths or diverse providers, and clear response processes when physical connectivity is disrupted. For beginners, it helps to see redundancy as a security investment because it reduces impact even when prevention is impossible. You cannot stop every storm, accident, or infrastructure failure, but you can design so that one failure does not stop everything. Environmental monitoring also matters here because you want early warning when conditions degrade, such as rising temperatures or power anomalies. Early warning creates time to respond before systems fail. When environmental dependencies are monitored and planned for, the organization is less likely to experience sudden outages that cause data loss and emergency work. Physical vulnerabilities also include the human processes around facilities and devices, because policies are only as strong as the habits that enforce them. Visitor management is a common example, because visitors can be legitimate and still create risk if they are not supervised or if they are allowed into restricted areas. Delivery procedures matter too, because packages can be placed near sensitive spaces and people can use deliveries as a social engineering excuse to gain access. Cleaning crews, maintenance contractors, and temporary staff can also create risk if access is not controlled and if background processes are weak. For beginners, it is helpful to see this as the physical equivalent of identity and access management in networks. You want to know who is present, what they are allowed to access, and when their access should expire. Clear procedures for badge issuance, escort requirements, and after-hours access can reduce risk dramatically. Another process vulnerability is key management, because physical keys that are copied, lost, or shared informally can undermine the entire access model. A mature program treats physical access credentials with the same seriousness as digital credentials, because both can lead to compromised pathways. Physical vulnerabilities also affect evidence and investigation, which connects this topic back to monitoring and response. If an attacker can access devices physically, they may be able to destroy logs, remove storage, or tamper with systems in ways that complicate investigation. This is why physical security and cybersecurity must cooperate, because incident response often requires both digital evidence and physical evidence. For beginners, it helps to understand that an incident may begin as a physical event, like a stolen laptop, but then become a digital incident, like unauthorized access using cached credentials. A mature program has processes for reporting lost devices quickly, revoking credentials associated with the device, and assessing what data might have been accessible. Facilities evidence, such as access logs and camera footage, may also be relevant to confirm whether a person entered a space or whether a device was removed. This coordination reduces the chance that a physical incident becomes a larger breach. It also speeds investigation because you can correlate physical and digital timelines. When physical vulnerabilities are included in the program, response becomes more complete and less dependent on guesswork. Another common beginner misunderstanding is believing that physical security is someone else's job and therefore outside the scope of cybersecurity. In reality, responsibilities may be split across teams, but risk does not respect org charts. A mature security program does not need to own physical security to include physical vulnerabilities, because inclusion can mean partnership, shared risk assessments, and coordinated controls. This might involve aligning facility access zones with network segmentation zones, coordinating visitor procedures with sensitive system locations, and ensuring that device inventory supports both IT and physical asset tracking. It also means including environmental dependencies in business continuity planning, such as identifying which systems require power redundancy and which facilities are critical for operations. For beginners, the key is to understand that security is an ecosystem, and the best programs reduce gaps between teams rather than defending turf. Physical vulnerabilities are often gaps because they sit between facilities, IT, and security functions. When those functions communicate, gaps shrink and risk reduces. When they operate in silos, attackers and accidents find the seams. Including physical vulnerabilities also means thinking about remote work and travel, because devices leave the controlled environment and enter uncertain spaces. A laptop in a coffee shop, a hotel, or an airport is exposed to theft, shoulder surfing, and unattended moments that can lead to compromise. This is not about paranoia, and it is about recognizing that physical context changes risk. Practical controls include encouraging secure screen habits, safe storage, and rapid reporting of loss or theft. It also includes making sure that devices are configured so that loss is less damaging, such as requiring authentication to unlock and limiting the amount of sensitive data stored locally. For beginners, the lesson is that physical vulnerability is not limited to server rooms, and it includes the everyday spaces where work happens. Organizations that support remote work must treat physical risk as part of the security program, not as an unavoidable inconvenience. This also connects to policy and culture, because people follow physical safety habits more consistently when the habits are simple, explained, and reinforced. When remote physical realities are included, the program becomes more honest and more resilient. As we close, including physical vulnerabilities means expanding your security lens to the full set of dependencies that keep systems safe and available. Facilities vulnerabilities involve access control, monitoring, and process discipline, so restricted spaces remain restricted and evidence remains available. Device vulnerabilities involve physical custody, tamper risk, theft risk, and the practical reality that physical possession can bypass many logical protections. Environmental dependencies involve power, cooling, water, and physical connectivity, which can create outages and data loss even without an attacker, and which can be mitigated through redundancy and monitoring. These areas are not separate from cybersecurity because physical weaknesses can enable digital compromise, and environmental failures can create the same business harm as malicious activity. For brand new learners, the most important takeaway is that a mature security program protects outcomes, and outcomes depend on physical reality. When you include physical vulnerabilities in your assessments, planning, and response processes, you reduce blind spots and you make the program more realistic, more coordinated, and more capable of preventing and handling incidents that do not fit neatly into a purely digital model.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.